Well, we're starting where we left off last week. And if you have your handouts, we're on point number 4. And we're talking about David and Goliath. So I'm not going to do a bunch of review. But David and Goliath, you all basically know the story. But remember now, David is a younger man. Floyd and I, we've talked about this on a couple of different occasions. David is somewhere between 8 years old at the youngest and 19 at the oldest. I personally think he was about 12 or 15. How old he is actually really doesn't matter. We do know that he's the youngest of 8 sons. The 3 oldest are in the army, and you couldn't go into the army until you were 20. So of 8, you take 3 in the army that are 20 or older, you take 5 that are under 20. So if the next 4 were quadruplets and they were 19, David's 18. That's about as old as you can make him. If they're 19 and 18 and 17 and 16, well, then David could be 15. How old it is not that big of a deal. But David is a young man, okay? And there are several things in the scripture that indicate that he was somewhere around 12-ish. He's called a lad. He's out taking care of the sheep. There's several things that I won't go into right now. But anyway, we know David's a young man, and he goes out on the behest of his father to take supplies to his brothers who are in the army out of the valley of Elah. And when he gets out there, the army has gone down into the valley to fight. So what does David do? He goes down into the valley where they're fighting. He goes down amongst the conflict, hunting for his brothers. And while he's down there, it's in the afternoon, and Goliath comes out and says his challenge. Remember, Goliath, every morning and every afternoon, he would give his challenge. Basically, he challenged in the morning. If nobody would take him up, you go fight. And you'd fight until he came up and made his challenge again. Okay? So when David hears the challenge, he says, hey, what's going on? And he looks at his brother Eliab, his eldest, and he says, listen, Dad, if you do this, Dad could be tax-free. Your brothers could be tax-free. We could be tax-free for the rest of our lives. And you would be wealthy, and you'd be married into the royal family. Isn't there a cause, Eliab? And he says, I don't. Get away from me, kid. I know the naughtiness of your heart. So then David turns to others, and that's where we are here, okay? So verse 28 of 1 Samuel 17. Your motives will often be questioned. All right? And Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he, David, spake to the men, and Eliab's anger was kindled. Now, David had already spoken this before to Eliab, and now he's speaking to the guys. Isn't there a cause? And Eliab says, why came you hither? And with whom have you left the sheep in the wilderness? I know your pride. I know the naughtiness of your heart. You came down here to see a show. Is that why David came? No. But that was Eliab's accusation. I know your pride, your naughtiness. Why aren't you doing what you're supposed to do? Eliab has now accused David of dereliction of duty. You're supposed to be watching the sheep. Now, who sent David to see the brothers? Dad. When David left to see his brothers on obedience to his father, what did he do with the sheep? He left them in the keeper of the sheep. So David neglected his duty. But David had gone to Eliab and said, hey, big brother, as the eldest brother and the guy in line to inherit the estate, and remember Jesse was a man of renown in Bethlehem, you're going to get that and you can be tax-free and part of the royal family and be rich and all your... Why aren't you doing your duty? So Eliab is accusing David of something of which Eliab is really guilty. So you look at Eliab's evaluation of David, compare it with the evaluation that Saul's servant gave. So I know this guy over here, he's about 12 years old or so, 15 maybe, and he's a mighty man of valor. A goodly man, good-looking guy. The Lord is with him. The captain in Saul's cabinet had a higher opinion of David than his brother did. Might there have been some jealousy? Well, you go back to 1 Samuel chapter 16, and I won't read all of this. But when Samuel is told to go anoint the new king, Samuel doesn't know who it is. He's merely told to go to Bethlehem, to the house of Jesse, and anoint him. So Samuel gets down to Jesse's house and says, where's your boys? And so they bring to him the brothers. And Samuel says, it must be this one. God says, no, I haven't chosen him. Oh, it must be the next one. No, I haven't chosen him. What about the third? No, I haven't chosen him. So they bring in all the brothers, and God says, none of these. And Samuel says, are you sure this is all your kids? God told me to come to your house. They said, well, the youngest one's out there. The question I have then is, could there might have maybe been a little bit of inter-family jealousy going on? Eliab should have been, I'm the seventh from Pharez. I'm the eldest. I'm of the tribe of Judah. I'm the guy heir apparent to my father's estate. What do you mean, my little brother? He's just a kid. Might there have been some petty jealousy? I would say there probably is, but I'm guessing at that. So, your motives will be questioned. Point number 5, you see here. The cause of Christ is always worth fighting for. And David said, Eliab, what have I done? Isn't there something worth fighting about? Come on. Money, marriage into the royal family, tax-free for your father's house. And again, let me stress, if Eliab slays Goliath, his father's house, Eliab's dad's house, that means dad, Jesse, and all the brothers are tax-free. Wouldn't you like to have the government come up to you and say, listen, you and all your kids for the rest of your lives, all your descendants from now on, you don't have to pay any taxes? Hey, just the reward, isn't that worthy? Isn't this worth fighting for? Well, what have I done? Is there not a cause? David's rebuttal, Eliab, it's your birthright that you would be tax-free. You will marry into the royal family. You'll be wealthy. Do you not see your opportunity? Do you not see your duty? This is something you ought to do. But Eliab didn't want to do it. So he turned from Eliab, went to another, and spake after the same manner. And the people answered again after the former manner. Hey, listen, not going to do it. Seeing Eliab's cowardness, David goes down amongst the rest of the soldiers, trying to get somebody to go fight Goliath. Will you do it? How about you? Come on. Wouldn't you like for your family to be tax-free? Wouldn't you like to be married to the royal family? Wouldn't you like to have riches? Come on. Somebody's got to do this. But similarly, as God said, I sought for a man and found none, David sought for somebody and couldn't find any. Finally, it comes to this point. When everybody else goes and flies the coop, you have to remember, it's up to you, no matter what anybody else thinks, does, or says, it's up to you to do the right thing. You have to do right yourself. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks, does, or says. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 31 says, and when the words were heard that David spoke, somebody went and told Saul, there's somebody down there trying to rally the troops to go fight Goliath. So they brought David to Saul. Now, in the past, just a couple of weeks ago, a month or so ago, David was in Saul's palace playing music for him. Did Saul know who David was? Yes. Might it be that Saul and David never had, face-to-face conversations and played chess and had sandwiches together? David could have been over in the corner not doing anything, and Saul just knows there's somebody over there playing. But probably Saul knows who the kid is. He knows who David is. So David comes in, and David says to Saul, don't be afraid. Don't let anybody be afraid. I'll go fight him. If none of the soldiers will, I will. Now remember the description of Saul in comparison with Israel. What was Saul's description? Head and shoulders bigger than everybody. Saul was a big dude. Who was the challenger of the Philistines? Bigger than everybody, a giant. So it would make sense in a way that the Philistines' biggest guy, picking at somebody to fight with, Israel ought to send their biggest guy. Now, something to understand, a little side note here. Saul was not the king that God wanted Israel to have. But did God pick Saul to be their king? Yes. When Israel wanted to have a king, and they came to Samuel and said, we want a king, not you. And Samuel went to God and said, what should I do? And God says, Samuel, don't worry, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me. I'll tell you what, give them their king, but I'll choose them. Now the children of Israel said, we want a king that will be like the rest of the nations. So God said to Samuel, tell them what their king's going to be like. I'll pick him. And this is what he's going to be like. So Samuel told them. They said, that's okay. We want a king anyway. God said, okay, I'll give you what you want. So God put Saul in there. Now, the next thing you have to understand about Saul is God, through Samuel, went to Saul and said, Saul, if you will do right as king, I will keep somebody from your bloodline on the throne forever. Could Saul have been, bloodline-wise, always on the throne? What was the catch? It'll have to be through your daughter, not your son. Because David, of the line of Jesse, is going to be the king. He didn't tell Saul that, but the prophecy was always that the king will come from the tribe of Judah, and Saul was from the tribe of Benjamin. So if one of your daughters marries into the royal family, then you can be the king. Your bloodline can be on the throne, but through your daughter. Okay? Now, it didn't work out that way because Saul does wrong. But Saul always had the opportunity to do right. Now, did God know that Saul wasn't gonna? Yes. Therefore, it was predestined that Saul had to be, he had no choice, he could only be the bad guy. No, if there was predestination about you've got to be the bad guy, God would never have given him the choice. If you do right, you can do this. Foreknowledge does not mean predestined. I know what's going to happen. God knows everything. He knows the end from the beginning. He knows what Saul's going to choose, but he always gives he gives us the choice. Let no man's servant fail him, his heart fail him. I will go and fight the Philistine. And Saul said to David, you're just a little kid. You can't do that. David says, well, one time I was out taking care of the sheep, and a lion came up and attacked the sheep, and I grabbed the lion and I killed him with my bare hands. Another time a bear came out and got a hold of the sheep, and I killed the bear with my bare hands. And just like God allowed me, notice he says here that God allows him, okay, thy servant, verse 36, thy servant slew both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them, seeing he hath defied the armies of the living God. What did David see as the challenge here? He's defying my God. Point number 7, trust God and get the job done. Sometimes, point 6, sometimes it's just up to you, and you got to do it. David said, as the Lord delivered me from the lion and the bear, he'll deliver me from this guy. So to whom did David give the credit for his success? God. All right. And Saul, the big, taller than everybody, king of Israel, says to the little kid, well, then you ought to go. Go and fight him. And, may the force be with you. Now, I know it doesn't say it that way, but Saul is, what a cheesehead. Saul's a coward. Oh, go, and the Lord be with you. All right. Then Saul armed David with his armor. How big was Saul? Bigger than everybody. How big was David? He was still in his teens. David puts them on. He's rattling around like a BB in a boxcar. But notice, the best thing Saul has to offer David was man-made. Folks, learn the lesson. If the best you have is man-made, you'll fail. You need spiritual help to get through the battles of this life. Trust God and do right. So what did David say when he put all that stuff on? He put on the helmet of brass on his head and the armor of coat on his mail. And you see there in 1 Samuel 9:2, it's all real big. It's too big for David. And David comes up with point number 8. You can't fight your battle with somebody else's armor. You can't fight your battles with somebody else's abilities. Well, I'd do that if I could this. Well, Fred can do this. No, wait. No temptation, no test has ever come to you that God has not equipped you to get through. He's the faithful one. No test, no temptation has ever come to you that God has not designed you, wired you, structured you to be able to get through it. Okay? So don't try to fight the battle that you have yourself in, the battle you're in. Don't try to fight it with the abilities that somebody else has. Well, I saw him do this, I'll try that. Now say, Lord, what can I do? I can only do what you let me do. Give me the ability. Give me the strength. Lord, enable me. Don't try to do it with somebody else's ability. Okay? David girded the sword upon his armor and essayed to go. And you're rattling around and thinking. David said, I can't go with these things. I've not proved them. I can't move around in them easily. And David took them off. He put a staff in his hand, his shepherd's crook. Took 5 smooth stones out of the brook. Now where is the brook? It's down the valley. Get this. Now think it through. David, we're passing through some time. David is in the tent with Saul. Goliath's over on the hill. The valley's in between. And David goes down. David is going down into the battle. He doesn't have his army. All he's got is his staff and his sling. But he's got no stones yet. Okay, he's got his gun but no bullets. And he's heading toward the giant. When he gets down to the bottom, Goliath is still up on the little ridge there. David stoops down and picks up 5 stones. Puts them in his pouch. I've heard several sermons on this. We find out in the Bible later that Goliath has several brothers. So why did David pick up 5 stones? Well, he didn't know if he'd hit them the first time. No, I think it was the sermon I heard. He picked up 5 because Goliath had 4 brothers. It's a pretty good sermon, but you can play off that one all you want. He took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones out of the brook, put them in his shepherd's bag, which he had, even its script, and his sling in his hand, and he came near the Philistine. And the Philistine came and drew near unto David. And the man that bare the shield went before him. So David's going out, little kid, against the giant and his assistant. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained David. For he was a youth and ruddy and of fair countenance, baby-faced little red-cheeked kid. And the Philistine Goliath said unto David, Am I a dog that you've come out with your stick to whip on me? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine said to David, Come, and I will give your flesh to the fowls. I'll beat you up and feed you to the birds. Number 9. David makes a great statement here in verse 45. David looks at the Philistine, who has just said, I'm going to feed you the birds. And David says this, You got a sword and a spear and a shield, and you got a guy there carrying your shield. That's really great. I'm coming to you in the power of God. Let's see you beat that one. I'm coming to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, the God that you have defiled. He's the one fighting this. Why? Because the battle is the Lord's. Today, though you said you'll feed me to the birds, David says to Goliath, God will deliver you to me. I will smite you. I will take your head off of you. I will give your carcass to the host of the Philistines today, unto the fowls of the air, to the wild beasts of the earth, and all of the earth will know there's a God in Israel. What was David's frame of mind in relationship to this battle? What's the outcome going to be? Well, Goliath said, if you beat me, we'll serve you. If I beat you, you serve us. That's not how David looked at this battle. He said, God will give you to me, and the world will know there's a God. Get your mind off of worldly values. You're in a spiritual battle. You're fighting, you're representing, you are an ambassador for the cause of God. Stop looking at whether you're going to get a plaque on the wall. Doesn't matter. Will the world know there's a God? What's the most important question you can ever ask anybody? Will I see you in heaven? You can be there too. Alabama won. It was a great game. That's wonderful. Let's go talk about that. No. You're not going to go to heaven because Alabama won. Get your mind focused on things that really are important. Okay? You're in a fight. You're in a conflict. You're in a battle of some kind. Why are you fighting what you're fighting? So that you'll win and not to pay taxes anymore? That you'll win and have a better job in a corner office? That you'll win and be able to retire with enough in your 401k? Or are you fighting the battle that you're in because I need to do my part to let the world know that there is a God? Check your motives. Why am I doing what I'm doing? That he would have preeminence in all things. Your actions make a difference. Point number 10. Your actions make a difference. And all this assembly, now when David says to Goliath, the whole world's going to know that there's a God, then he makes this statement. And this assembly, back behind me, they'll know that the Lord doesn't use swords and spears. The battle belongs to God, and he will give you into our hands. He's pointing at the Jews. Hey, you Jews, you will know what God is like. Because for what has been happening for the last 40 days? With Saul, their wonderful king, as their leader, what have they been experiencing? Sword swinging, slings shooting, spear throwing, hand grappling, non-victory, no end in sight. David said, Goliath, I'm just a kid. Today, God will give you to me, and the world will know. And this group behind me, maybe they'll figure it out. There's a God. Now, folks, in our lives, don't assume for a second that just because a person goes to church, just because they're saved, that they have a true, honest-to-goodness, personal relationship with Jesus Christ and they trust him every day. Because we live in the flesh. I'm not saying doubt your salvation, they're saying, but hey, I want to hear well done. I want to hear God say well done to you. Your decisions make a difference. How you act and react make a difference in people's lives. Will you live your life in such a way that people behind you, as the song goes, will those who come behind us find us faithful? Will they see something worth getting? Or when people look at our lives as Christians, they say, yeah, they went to church. Well, a good lot of good that did them. Outside of church, they were idiots. No. Point to God in all things. Your actions make a difference. Some trust in chariots, Psalm 20 says. Some in horses. But we will remember the name of the Lord our God. The horse, Proverbs tells us, the horse is prepared for battle, against the day of battle. But the safety comes from the Lord. The battle is the Lord's. And it came to pass when the Philistine arose and came out and drew near to meet David, that David hastened. As the Philistine, I always like this, the armor bearer, he's chunking along in front of Goliath. And Goliath is big, so his steps are a little bigger. So the shield carrier's got to really hustle to stay in front of Goliath. And they're chunking down the hill toward David. David starts running toward Goliath. It says so. And David hasted toward the Philistine, ran to meet him. And as he's running, he reaches his hand down in his bag, puts a stone in the sling, zing, 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 whack. Now, please picture this. You have Goliath, a moving target, and David, a moving projectile. They're both running. And David's still accurate. Does God direct the arrow, the sling, the stone, the missile, the offense? Is God in charge? Or does Dave sit down and real quick pull out his slide rule and figure out the projectile and the velocity and all that, and I'll get behind. No, David just says, God, this belongs to God. Stone, sling, whang. And Goliath fell. But David did not have a sword in his hand. Therefore, David ran up to the unconscious Goliath, pulled out his sword out of his sheath, and whacked his head off. So Goliath was beheaded by his own sword. And when the Philistines saw that their champion was killed, they took off running. And the men of Israel and of Judah arose and shouted and pursued the Philistines even they came to the valley and to the gates of Ekron. And the wounds of the Philistines fell down by the way of Shaaraim, and unto Gath, and unto Ekron. This here, you'll see the little yellow box there, just a side note. It talks about Israel and Judah. There is a division in the country between Israel and Judah. It's a cultural division. And when the civil war occurs later on, at the end of David's life and so forth, that's where the country splits. And there's a history behind all that, so I just brought it in because it says here Israel and Judah, the north and the south. At this point, they're all acting together. Okay? And if you had a map, you could see where Bethlehem is and where the Valley of Elah is and where they go around to Gath. They make a little northerly turn and get up to Gath again. The children of Israel returned from chasing the Philistines after they had spoiled their tents. And David took the head of the Philistines and brought it to Jerusalem, and he put his armor in his tent. Now, from 54 to 57, there's a jump of time. So the next couple of verses, it's not sequential, okay? And when Saul saw David go forth against the Philistine, he said to Abner, the captain of his host, Abner, whose son is this? He's not saying, who is this kid? He's saying, who's the father of this child? Why? Because if David wins, what have I proclaimed? As Saul, I'm the king. What did I say? If David wins, what happens? His father's house is tax-free. I know David. Don't know him well, maybe. Maybe I know him really well. It doesn't really matter. But David's been in my court playing the harp and so forth. Who's his dad? And Abner says, I don't know. I've never met his dad. I'll have to find out. And the king said, inquire, find out who the dad is. And David returned after the slaughter of the Philistine, and Abner took him and brought him to Saul. So that we've gone back in time and forward in time, okay? With the head of the Philistine in his hand. So David walks into Saul's tent and says, see, here it is. Goliath's dead. And Saul said, who's your dad? And David answered, said, Jesse. Jesse of Bethlehem. Okay? So, does Saul now know who's the father? So here's our challenge after all of that 2 weeks of study about the story of David and Goliath. Here's our challenge. And when Goliath stood and cried unto the armies of Israel and cried, why are you come out to set your battle in array? Am I not a Philistine, you the servant of Saul? Choose you a man this day. Let him come out and come down to me. If he be able to fight with me and kill me, we'll serve you. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you will be our servants and serve us. So here's your challenge. Why are you come out to battle? Do you know why you're here? You have a spiritual battle to fight. If you are a child of God, the world hates you and is going to proclaim war against you. Do you know why are you here? Are you the ambassador that you're supposed to be, or is this for you just some kind of spiritual game? You know, I go to church and I carry my Bible and I'm a nice guy and I don't rob, cheat, murder, or steal, so I'm an okay guy. Is this just a game, or do you really know why you're here? Is this serious with you? Is being a Christian serious? Why do you say you're in the spiritual battle if you're all the time playing tiddlywinks somewhere? Number 2. Goliath says, am I not a Philistine and a servant of Saul? So the question is, do you really know who you are? Or are you just playing at this? Whose child are you anyway? Are you really a Christian, or are you just religious? Are you a child of God really? Then for Pete's sake, act like one. God said, I know who I am. And you all got the uniform on of the Israelite army. Is that who you are? Do you know who you are? Third question. Choose a man, let him come down to me. Do you really believe you're going to win? Or are you just talk? Well, I love God. I believe the Bible. Heaven's going to be great. Do you say that, or do you live it? Do you really believe? Are you committed to it? Again, I'm not trying to get anybody to question their salvation. No, I'm just trying to get you to... the Bible says, so let a man examine himself. Is being a child of God and an ambassador of Jesus Christ, is it real? Or are you just hanging around the water cooler spouting stuff? You hanging around the faculty lounge just talking? Or is it real? What do you really believe? If I be able to kill him, you'll serve us. If he can kill me, we'll serve you. Do you understand that there's an end result to all this? There's a consequence to your choice. What you choose has an end. It is a battle to the death, and the loser will serve the winner. Now, you're not going to lose your salvation. If you're a born-again Christian, you're not going to lose your salvation. But if you're not fighting for Christ, you are serving the enemy. You're a traitor. That's all there is to it. There's no neutral here. Recently, in our political military news, I forget the guy's name, but he deserted his post and ran off, and he got captured by the Taliban and was held for a couple years, and then a bunch of guys were released out of Gitmo to get him back and all that kind of stuff. Hey, when you desert your post and you go see what the other guy's doing, you're a traitor. God says, hey, serve me. To not serve me doesn't make you neutral. To not serve me is giving ammunition to the enemy. Your decisions, your choices, they have a consequence. It's a battle to the death. That's our challenge for today. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Just to back up a little bit, when David kicked Goliath in the head with the stone, it doesn't say he killed him. It said he fell on his face.
Right.
He slew him with his own sword.
Yeah.
So
He knocked Goliath. Goliath was stunned. But he was dead when he got his own sword hacked on his neck. Yeah. So did the stone,
all this time we've been taught that David slew him with the sling, but that's not the way it happened.
there you go. So when you look at this, did David defeat Goliath with the sling? To a point, that was the first thing. But that didn't kill him. Now the Bible doesn't say he wasn't dead. It said he fell over. He could have been unconscious. He could have been dead. We don't know. But we do know that when he walks into Saul's tent with Goliath's head in him, we know that Goliath's dead then. When the head's off, you know you're dead. Up till then, it's a guessing game. So, yeah, David hits him, at the very least knocks him unconscious. Could have killed him, don't know, but he's at least unconscious.
What does verse
50 said, David prevailed against the Philistine with the sling of the stone and smote the Philistine and slew him, but there was no sword. So it appears that he's dead, and at the very least, he's never going to get up. He's, brain dead. So that is a collective statement in the Jewish language. It's taking verse 51 down to verse 54 and throwing it all together. Okay?
Verse 51 says that he took the sword and slew him.
Yeah. So you got to read our verses are not, the whole paragraph says he hit him with the thing, he prevailed over him, he took the sword and killed him. Took off his head. So again, the question is, and we don't have a definite answer one way or the other. When the stone hit Goliath, did that kill him or knock him out? One or the other. By the time David went back to the tent, Goliath was dead. Okay, and David did prevail over him. He made Goliath inoperable with the stone. And whether he killed him or not, don't need to argue about that so much. But it's a point to look at. Okay, anything else? Okay, seeing none, let's have a word of prayer, and then we'll be dismissed and take down the Christmas tree. Dear Lord God, we thank you again for your love for us. Help us, Lord, to take the things in the Bible, apply them to our lives, ask you to give us guidance, and then follow the direction that you give to us, that we might serve you and be the ambassadors we ought to be, that others would be able to come to us when they need to, and through us, because of you, give them the information they need and be able to witness to them that they would accept Christ as Savior. In the name of Jesus Christ I pray, for his will I ask. Amen. You are dismissed.